Welcome to Biggest Geek Ass. We're your host. I'm Randy.
And I'm Joe.
This is episode 186 of our
Did
show.
you do it?
I had 165. Yeah,
Okay, dude.
I know.
You're the math dude.
I'm losing.
You're the numbers guy.
I'm no longer the numbers guy.
It was a copy and paste error, obviously.
Oh, well. The date is Tuesday, April 9th, 2024. At least I think it was a few minutes ago. I'm not sure if it is anymore. Oh, goodness.
I'm going to correct that on my local copy.
Okay, so anyway, we're here to try to do a podcast. We'll see if I can talk and chew gum or drink tea at the same time.
Luckily, it's not really going to be about numbers explicitly, except the number of one
Correct.
thing. Yes.
2 is going to be important tonight.
Yes.
Looks like we got only a few folks in. Arnman Martinson.
Yeah.
What's up, Gary D20? Love your little, he puts little, what do they call polls on Twitter a lot. So he made it really.
Telephone polls?
No, like polls of what you like. Martinson's crying about something. He says Joe never got a hold of him about something.
No, I didn't. I forgot.
What's up, Patrick? But Gary D20 on Twitter, he'll make little polls like, what do you like? Like one he wrote was, what do you like better? He-Man, Masters of the Universe. Hey, Shadow, what's shaking? He-Man, Masters of the Universe. What was the other one? Thundercats. And I was like, got no dog in that fight. That's the only one I couldn't make a comment on. They were way too late. I thought that one he gave was really hard was, which would you choose? The Herculoids or Thundar the Barbarian? The Mighty Herculoids or Thundar? What would you choose, Joe?
Probably Space Ghost Coast to Coast.
Right on.
I would be snarky and choose something else. No, it would be difficult because I probably watched Thundar more.
I think I watched Herculoids more. But I think I voted for Herculoids, but I think Thundar won by a landslide. Shadow and Sun saying Thundar. Fair enough. I don't remember it, but I know I watched it, and I just love that little, I don't know if it's a Triceratops shot those little balls out of its little horn.
Yeah. They were rocks, not balls.
Okay, I thought they were balls. I thought they were like light balls he was shooting out.
No, I'm pretty sure
What's
they were
up,
rocks.
Legion of Myth. Sweet. Patrick Demo, David Quill, Shadow and Sun. Sweet. Did you get the game any this week, my man?
No, I did not.
Oh.
David Quill has a prediction about what 2 classes are going to be discussed today.
Oh.
And he thinks it's Monk and Warlock. On Twitter, he said something about a rogue, and was it Monk and Rogue? I can't remember what he said on Twitter.
Right on.
But it was funny.
Man of War.
I'm going to say no.
What?
Oh, okay. I'm going to say Monk and Warlock, sort of.
Okay.
In a way.
Yeah. Man of War is at the Nerdrotic meetup in Vegas. He says he can't stay too long. The neighbor of the beast says the booze will not drink itself. So fair enough, brother.
Well, you didn't leave it up there long enough for a dude to read it.
Well, I don't want to.
Especially with, impediments like me. Like I have. Like slow reader me. The booze ain't going to drink itself. Are you kidding?
Yeah. He said Nerdrotic. I was thinking Nerd Cognito. I was on the Speakeasy this past week and helping Kyle out because Ryan David was out. It was pretty fun. It was nice to be on there. Kyle thinks he beat me in a debate saying that first edition dragons were dangerous for player characters. I'm like, dude, I don't know what kind of experience you had, but my first edition characters didn't have much trouble with dragons. So
low-level characters.
Yeah. I said seventh to ninth level characters with a little bit of gear. Yeah.
If you just use the dragons from the monster manual.
Yeah.
Okay. There was probably some kind of way you can make them more dangerous.
Yeah.
By strategy and tactics and stuff. Perhaps. Perhaps.
The idea is they're smart. He made some good cases. They're smart. They can stay at range, but I'm like, archers are going to put them down, and if they get too far away where the archers can't hit them, they can't hurt the players. So it's a draw, right? At best.
Right.
And the size of the player character groups could get crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If you had 7, 8
Well,
people, 9 people is 8th level.
back in the day, sure.
Yeah. Anyway,
These days, you might be able to get 2 people for 4 hours.
you're right. Or 4 people for 2 hours.
4 people for 2 hours. Yeah.
But it was pretty good, and I was really happy with. Did you listen to the Daniel Fox interview with Nerd
No, I
Cognito?
didn't.
I
So, what
was
did you
pretty
think
pleased.
about it?
I thought it was really, really good. They caught some crap, but I think, like I told Kyle, the only thing I would have brought up different, I would have pressed him when he mentioned how he thought that if you had somebody like if you're doing an Asian themed game, you should listen to Asian people about the culture and stuff. And I'm like, maybe. And I was like, there's no problem because I would have said there's no such thing as cultural appropriation. I just don't believe it. I mean, if you make something, let's say, I don't know if it's true. Did from Mexico where tacos made in Mexico, was that their origination?
No, I think. Well, maybe depends on what you're talking about. Taco.
Let's just say it was. Let's just for argument's sake.
Yeah.
I can't make them and use them and sell them. Bull crap.
Right.
And if people like mine better than someone else, oh well, do better.
And you know what? Say he's right.
Yeah.
The book that the Wizards of the Coast gets heat about because of Asian stuff has a whole slew of Asian people in the credits for advisors and consultants and stuff. So whatever.
Legion of Myth. I know why you think that. You think he's not a good dude. I'm not going to say that because I don't think that was true. He seemed like a pretty reasonable guy, but he does have political leanings and beliefs that would lend me to think, I'm not down with that sickness. But I thought he handled himself well. But I know there's issues and stuff. But I mean, I don't think we'd be sitting around gaming together. But I don't think he's the worst guy in the world.
If I am running a museum or some sort of historical type thing that features Asian culture, I'm going to invite Asian folks. Just like if I've got some sort of historical display about Africa, I'm going to find Africans to consult and make sure I get it right because I want it to be right because it's historical and real. If I'm making a game and it's pseudo-Asian, I might just watch a few kung fu movies and get some cool ideas from that.
Right.
Especially some not necessarily back in the day. Oh no, they've got some pretty wild kung fu flicks from back in the 60s and 70s. Graphics aren't, special effects are junk, but they're pretty wild. And if I want it to be a fantastic Asian setting or just elements, it doesn't need to be accurate. It just needs to have a flavor.
And be fun.
Right. And be fun.
Yeah, Legion, I don't know if the guy is generally reasonable or not. Legion doesn't believe me. I'm just saying that on the Nerd Cognito podcast a couple weeks ago, he was reasonable. He was a decent guy. But, I mean, there were things clearly we didn't agree with things. And, we're not going to be holding hands singing Kumbaya.
By reasonable, you mean he was courteous.
He was more than courteous. He even listened to what they had to say. He wasn't like...
You could maybe make the argument that his points were unreasonable on their base, perhaps.
The only thing that really bothered me was that statement about I think you should give credence to Asian people. If I'm making a game, like Joe said, and I just want to have some kind of flavor, it's not wrong for me to steal from some idea that's out there.
Right.
So, yeah. Well, yeah, that's it. But anyway.
Okay, here. David Gwill says, at Biggest Geekus, I'm working on an Asian setting. Need like 4 classes to cover most things. Fighter and wizard type. Okay, stop right there. You're done.
Next.
Martial artist is a fighter. And maybe something to deal with spirits. A wizard.
There you go. Done. Next.
Yeah. Contact other plane is a wizard spell. So commune. I don't know. Commune might be a cleric spell, but yeah, you can finagle those things into the wizard. But if you want a little more flavor, I mean, honestly, I think martial artists are fighters. If they can't fulfill the fighter role, I mean, that's what they're supposed to do.
Should we start the topic?
Sure. And then, yeah. Hold on. You
Yeah.
do that.
What you doing, man?
Here you go.
Looking at stuff.
Yeah, this is for you.
Yeah. David Gould says, but at Chicago 67, which is moi, but don't you know Asian blood is magical and imparts special knowledge that you cannot possibly learn elsewhere? I didn't think of that, David. Good point. What's up, Darth? Darth in the house. All right, why don't we jump in the topic? Because
let's jump in.
We're talking about D&D, and I think it needs only 2 classes. I do think it needs only a fighter and a wizard. And notice the word I'm using is need. I think you could allow any spellcaster, the wizard type dude, to specialize in areas to make them become a cleric or a druid or some other, multi-classing gish.
Some version of those.
Or a bard. And then
thing is, I'm going to make this point right quick.
Sure.
The original cleric is a gish.
Mm-hmm.
They fight, wear armor, cast spells.
Yes.
Fight me.
They're really a ringer. They're really a ringer. The original cleric was a ringer.
Yeah.
He got to do everything. And when 3rd edition gave him 9th level spells, as much as I hate to admit it, he became the ultimate character of all characters. But yeah, right. I think, and David's bringing up a good point. I think you do have to, it would take a significant change in the game. I think you would have to have a suite of abilities. I think it would be interesting, as I was thinking today, if you had just 2 classes, 2 chassis to work from, you could designate, and you wouldn't need things like, you okay?
Sorry. Swallowed down the wrong pipe.
I would not want to have a fighter, and then because you're a barbarian, all of a sudden you get higher hit dice or more hit points. I would just rather let the fighter have a lot of hit points. And I was thinking today, just let your characters have, let's say, 10 hit points. All characters start out with 10 hit points. And then if you take a wizard, maybe you only get a couple. If you take a fighter, maybe you get another chunk, maybe another 10. It doesn't have to be 10. That's just a number I'm picking out of my hat. I haven't thought about it.
Yeah. They get lots of hit points is the idea.
But then within that, within each one of those classes, groupings, right? What's another word I thought about was the 2 archetypes. Might call them archetypes. You could get down to brass tacks through letting people choose suites of abilities and have limitations on how much access you can get. So you can't just take the full suite of every class every time you level up, or maybe certain levels where you can start to add to it instead of every single level getting to pick some particular thing. Because I don't want it to become, kind of like Rifts Rifts is not the right word. Maybe 3rd edition, where you can just pick and cherry pick everything. Yeah.
Well, okay. So instead of having just a laundry list in each of these chassis, so to speak, of things that are related to the magic user or fighter, you'd have to get them in bundles.
Yes, I'm thinking that. Martinson says this, do something like a talent tree. Yeah, talent trees intrigue me. David Gwills kind of said more eloquently like I did. You can associate the thing you get with hit points. Fighter gains plus X, wizard gains plus Y. Yeah, whatever. Joe and I are leaning toward a few more hit points, so our game will be a little more you'll be a little more robust at the beginning, but it doesn't mean you're going to be, the unstoppable magic warrior of death at first level.
No, to me, one of the failings of original D&D is making characters really disposable. I mean, or maybe they're not very durable. First level character, strong breeze will kill a bunch of first level characters.
David's saying you don't need to get them in bundles. I'm talking more like at the beginning. So when you choose your warrior class or archetype, you get a set number of things to start with. I think in our game, we're going to assume that adventurers are fairly knowledgeable about certain things. Like there'll be some skills like basic survival, riding, climbing, that I think most adventurers would have. And as much as I thought it was funny I kind of agree with Joe. I can't even picture the one hit point wizard. Just seems dumb to me.
Mm-hmm.
If you're an adventurer, if you're truly an adventurer, you're going to have to be fairly tough. Sometimes I think about Rifts where I get annoyed how, if you're playing Rifts or Palladium, well, Rifts is all I really have. I can't reference the rest of the Palladium universe. But if you pick Rifts as an example and you build a character, people talk about building wizards that pick boxing and bodybuilding and all that other stuff so they can buff themselves up. I find it really weird. Yeah.
Yes, Arn Man. The two are fighter and magic user. We started with just talking about the magic user. We haven't really gotten to the second one yet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we kind of mushed it a little by talking about them both. But we started with magic user or spellcaster, and fighter is conceptually built the same, just with different capabilities. So magic users are obviously spellcasters, and fighters are not.
Well, an Armin asked a very interesting question. Says, where does healing fit in? Well, in my mind, if healing is still going to be spells, which right now I think it will be, it'll fit in the magic user class. I would almost like, and I don't envision, David Will might like this, I don't envision the classic cleric being an easy build to create in a system like this, where you get full armor, where you get good hit points, and you can cast really good spells. What is Darth saying? He says, I once thought about using 3-5. This has been done. And turn all class abilities into feats or choices. No class, just build what you want. Not sure how it would work. I honestly think, Darth, not knocking you, dude, I think it would probably be a mess. And I think you would be able to cheese that so unbelievably well. But I don't know if you can avoid that in any game. There's a certain kind of cheese you're going to have, probably just possible.
I know we've talked about it before. There was somebody who did a point buy, not just for your stats, but for your class
character.
And it was in the early 3.0 days, I'm pretty sure.
When they did a 3.5 version too. I bet David Will knows. I feel like he's the one that reminded us of it.
Yeah, basically it was all broken down to points. And where you're going to run into problems, mostly, in my opinion, with trying to break down all your class abilities into feats, is with spellcasting, because there are so many spells, and there are 9 different levels of spells, and I think it would be difficult to break them down. You'd have so many. Fantasy craft,
yeah. Yeah, Shadow and Sun, we're not talking GURPS. I mean, I don't think I'm down to that level of granularity. I'm leaning where Arnman says. He said, so there would be class plugins that are packages of skills and abilities. That's what I would first want to try to implement. So that's what I meant by bundles. I would, maybe you pick a flavor for your archetype. But I'm not sure. This, like I said, that would just be a way to do it. I just know you could make it super granular where you can pick whatever you want. You could make it where you buy a suite of skills along a feat tree or a talent tree. But I would like all adventurers to have a certain base set of skills. So we might even build from, you are an adventurer, so every character gets blah, blah, blah. And then you are a fighter type or you're a wizard type, so you get chunks of these things. And then when you pick your specialty, and we'd have to figure out how that works, then you might get, right now I'm thinking you'd get a handful of things that would make you more like it.
Shadow Sun, yeah. He was talking about the everything feats, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to each their own. I would love to see Darth try that. My gut says, as crazy as 3.5 could have been anyway, with all the different choices you could make to multi-class, I'm not sure what would happen if you went straight down everything as a feat. I think Joe mentioned that once doing 3rd edition, make everything a feat. So, yeah.
It sounds good initially, especially if you're not talking about spellcasters. I think that's probably the easier side.
Mm-hmm.
The spellcasters, not so much, unless you eliminate most of the spells. In any event, so we've got. I think one way to do this, that might be a good way to do this, is reconceptualize the classes.
That's what I'm thinking. That's what we're going to probably do.
Instead of being able to be a paladin at first level,
Right.
or a cavalier from first edition, you would first have to be a fighter and gain some experience and renown to even be something like a paladin. I mean, becoming a knight in the real world, unless you were like rich and you could just pay somebody to knight you, which I'm pretty sure they did in some cases.
Yeah.
Back in the day when knights were warriors and not singers or politicians, you had to prove yourself, and you're not doing that at first level.
Within the campaign, you could have somebody that's real good at schmoozing somebody and makes a good deal with some underhanded guy, and he gets a title as knight. Doesn't mean he gets a package of knight abilities, right? Just within the game world, he's called Sir So and So.
Right.
But yeah, that'd be possible. But I think, and David Will's commenting about how you could go down the talent tree and pick different things, including spells. I guess for me, I just would love to see us have a base adventurer tier of abilities that every character gets, and then we kind of branch, and then that branches off too. I mean, it would feel like the class, but I'd like to do something where, like David's talking about, I'd like to be able to have some freedom for the wizard to pick up a fighting skill or a thing periodically, but I wouldn't want it to be wide open. So we might have to categorize certain suites of abilities as specializations, and you have to have the archetype to even pick some of those things. There may be off-limit things from once you choose your archetype. There could be things you just can't access anymore. Yes, your wizard can learn how to swing a sword. Yes, he could probably learn to choose to wear chainmail, like David said, with the right strength. But he's never going to be specialized in a sword. He's not going to put that kind of time in. He's got. If you're going to play the wizard, we have to make. I don't have to. I want the wizard players to mostly be wizardy. I want the fighter types to mostly be fightery, because to me, that's the whole. Yeah, now that would be okay. I like David's, where in David's game Dungeons and Delvers, and you correct me if I'm wrong, David Gwill. Our man says fighters could learn to read scrolls. There's your magic. Yeah, and I think they can learn to do they have to learn each particular
They get the
scroll?
base. They can learn a base spell, but they can never learn the more advanced properties of that spell. Where a wizard, if it's called wizard, they can either use more points to make the spell better. Maybe it levels up with them, something like that. But a fighter or some other class that's not a spellcaster can learn to cast, say, magic missile, but they would only ever get one die of damage.
Yes, Arnman says there could be special wizard weapons that are lesser than fighter weapons and limited. Yeah, that would be easier for them to learn. David's clarifying. It's a spell point cost. He said anyone can learn individual spell, but the magic point cost is really high, and it takes longer to cast.
Yeah, it takes longer to cast.
Now, see, Bruce is a fan of the more granular approach. He says, Bruce Lombardo, welcome, bud. Untrained leveling up in my game takes a month. There's just an example. First week, you get hit points. Second week, hit points and saves. Week 2, you get your skills. Week 3, you pick your feats. That's a way to control it. It's pretty granular from my viewpoint, but yeah, sure, why not?
Oh, good night, Bruce.
Later, bud.
Early night for him.
Yeah. I just don't know. I guess I don't want it to be like a GURPS 3.5, or maybe I will. Maybe once I get play testing, I'll be like, you know what? Like David does. Let's let people pick what they want. Let's see what happens. But right now, I feel like I would want it to be fairly separate with some crossover elements. I would like to see when your choice is made, you're going to be a fighter. That's how you're going to go. You'll never be the wizard you could have been had you chosen the wizard archetype.
So in this particular hypothetical system, there would be no retraining.
Retraining?
Yeah. So 3.5 had a retraining thing where you could retrain your previous class, or you could actually, if you spend enough time and gold, you could retrain just about anything.
Yeah.
Not your race, obviously.
Yeah. Sure. David
But
makes a
what
good
about,
point.
would there be multi-classing in this?
I feel like your multi-classing would come from you picking certain abilities from outside your archetype or in another suite of abilities. I mean, again, I'm kind of going in a direction I hadn't necessarily planned to go tonight because I don't have it fully thought out. But I was thinking like, if you're a fighter, you could like possibly be able to learn how to go berserker and rage once a day, whereas someone that fully followed the path of the barbarian could rage more often. Um, yeah, it may not be the end of the world. I mean, I don't know. I'd have to see it to believe it, see it to understand it first. I know for sure that I wouldn't have the thief. We talked about that last week. There'd be no thief class. I think you could make your guy a rogue. I think there would be certain skills that characters would need to pick up, like I think picking pockets and tracking and hunting and religious studies and devotee, that sort of stuff would need to be something you have to pick. That's not across the board like, something like basic survival and climbing and things like that, that all adventurers would have. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really in favor of having a common core set of things that anybody, well, in the adage, you can try anything, but you shouldn't. I don't like necessarily restricting weapons to class.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, especially in a kind of setting that we are often finding ourselves in the fantasy medieval esque setting. Everybody, unless you're living under a rock, is going to know how to ride a horse. I mean, you're not going to necessarily be great at it.
No,
but it's not like you're going to look at a horse. I've never seen one of them before.
I think it's really weird to think that adventurers would go out and do things and not even people that lived in a somewhat fantasy, quasi medieval, fantastical world would have. And there'd be things you know how to do. Almost everybody that was a full adult could start a fire. Almost everybody could ride a horse. They could use a rope. Legion, I'm not sure I get this comment. Legion says Common Core RPG. I know what Common Core math is, but I'm not sure what Common Core RPG is supposed to correlate to. Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know how it necessarily relates to this. Common Core is looked at by a lot of people as being stupid. So
well, the truth of I don't want to turn to a math class. I don't disagree with that statement. I think it's a foolish way to teach children math, but I understand what they're trying to do. It just doesn't work. So
right. So when we say wizard can use sword, that just means they don't just get a penalty just for picking it up. And
they can pick it up and swing it, and be a normal attack bonus that
they're familiar with it. Yeah, and which is going to probably be low because they're not trained in combat.
Yeah, and you can make someone who.
I said Common Core. Okay, yeah, I did. A common core of things. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, okay. I'm with him now. Okay, I'm following.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought it's a common core. I just think there would be some of those. Now, I think there would be skills, like some of the thief skills, rogue skills, would be pretty specialized, like being able to sneak attack or to sneak around or to move silent.
I'm going to have to disagree with sneaking.
I don't know, dude. Go ahead.
We all can sneak to some degree or another and try to sneak. Some are going to be better or worse at it.
I guess I can try to hide.
Yeah. It's not sure. There's maybe some who are better at it than others.
Yep. But that's what I mean. You'd have kind of a default role. I don't think it would be like, I think everybody, though, I don't know how it's going to work with the common skills either. The ones standard adventuring skills, they can just do. But I don't think sneaking is something you can just be successful at. I think it has to be a role.
Well, sure, it's a role. I'm not saying it's not a role.
I'm not saying you can't try to sneak. I would let a fighter in full plate armor try to sneak. Even in 3.5, you could try it.
Dude, we all played hide and seek as kids.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to say that most people have a rudimentary, just like wizards have a rudimentary attack ability, right? They can learn how to use a sword, maybe not well, but they can use it. But saying can I sneak around? You're not a thief. You can't do that. It's weird to me because we all learned how to hide from people. I did. I
Mhm.
was really good at. I don't do it nowadays, but when I was younger, I was always trying to scare my sisters.
Yep.
So I would hide behind doors and do all kinds of things, and then I'd go boom and scare the crap out of them.
Yeah, Darth and David Gill are supporting you. Darth says he has a 6'2", 350-pound friend that is one hell of a sneaky dastardly. So yeah, maybe but that sounds like someone, if he's really good, I don't know if it's natural or not. Maybe it is. And David Gill says it's pretty easy to sneak in armor if you know how to move. Okay, I've never worn armor. I don't know. So it doesn't seem like it would be easy to do that in plate mail, but
I'm not saying everybody should know how to do it well,
right.
especially
Oh,
if your
everybody can.
manual dexterity isn't very good.
You can
But
make a roll. You can make a roll.
I'm just saying it shouldn't be restricted to a class or an archetype or anything like that.
No, I don't think so. I'm not saying restrict those, but those would be skills you'd have to pick.
That's restricting it. So if everybody, okay, it's like we were saying, everybody should know how to ride a horse.
So that would be a free skill you would get at a basic level. I guess you're saying then sneaking should be a free skill everybody should get. Hiding should be a free skill they should get. Not picking locks, though.
No, that requires special training to do.
Hunting and tracking.
That does too.
Yeah.
You're not, yeah, those aren't, see, to me, sneaking and hiding are natural isn't the right word, are intuitive, right? When hiding is very straightforward. It's not a specialized thing. Whereas hunting, you have to know where the animals are at. You have to know how to track them down, what tracks look like, what tracks belong to what animals. That's not intuitive. That's something someone has to show you. Sneaking and hiding, no one has to show you how to do that. You just have to practice at it.
I think I'm convinced. But I guess you just, like David said before, you just make people that want to specialize in it be better.
Yeah.
Possibly. Okay, fair enough. What about, now I do think of, if you want to be religious, I've toyed with the idea, and I think I got it from Dungeons and Delvers, of like a faith score, or David's talked to me, I doubt it. I'd like people to be able to choose to be faithful or not. I'd like people to have the right to be sort of a wizard could become a quote-unquote cleric wizard if he's particularly religious and has true faith. I was toying with the idea of what true faith might be versus I go to church on Sunday. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That could be a very different...
oh, sure. Being part of a religion is different from being very faithful.
Yeah. There's a lot of, for example, people that, I'm not a Catholic, but there are a lot of people that say, well, I'm Catholic, and they haven't stepped inside of a church since they were 7.
Or they just go on Easter and Christmas.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's true, not just in Catholicism, but
in
all variations and flavors of Christianity. Yeah. So I guess, we're in a truly faithful. Yeah. Yeah. David said it's something they're doing in 2nd edition for Dungeons and Delvers. I do like that idea of faith being a differential some way. I wonder if it'd be fun to think of a few powers that a wizard could get because he's particularly faithful. His patron could grant him something. You could be a wizard that can maybe raise the dead if you do the right ritual. But it wouldn't.
What if it just makes you better at what you do? Okay. So someone who's faithful, and you might break it down to the particular deity and not make it too general.
Yep.
It depends on what kind of setting you're running it. So if you have, if it's monotheistic, then you could probably generalize. But if it's polytheistic, you can get real granular with what things you can get. I mean,
you could go off Faith and Avatars in the 2nd edition on it if you wanted to.
Right. So you can look at Clash of the Titans with Perseus.
Mm-hmm.
That was Perseus, right?
Yes.
Perseus.
In the movies, yes. Clash of the Titans.
He was given gifts and he was looked after, and he was probably a step above the average dude, and all of that he got from being favored. He wasn't necessarily not in anything that I saw. He wasn't necessarily a faithful dude.
Mm-hmm.
He was just favored.
Yeah.
Zeus said, I like that dude. I'm giving him stuff.
Yeah. Wasn't he Zeus's son too? Like a half god or something? I don't remember.
I don't know. I don't think Perseus.
Hate to go down this rabbit hole, Darth. I'm not dodging. He says, will resurrection require the target to have a faith in a god to work? If it's up to me, resurrection is going to be a tricky business. I just don't want it to be something that just anybody can do whenever. So.
Okay, so how about we get even a little tiny bit more granular on that issue? What if it's someone who's recently dead, right? Not been dead for maybe a minute,
right,
or less, and you have something that can just revive them before their soul has had time to depart?
Yeah, I could be probably talked into some kind of spell or ability that could do that, but it would have to be a very short window, right? Yeah, correct, David.
Yes.
Joe was talking about someone who is mostly dead. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it would be, it could be called something like resuscitate.
Yeah. I think in 5th edition they call it revivify.
Revivify, yeah.
But we could have but if your character dies and you guys drag him back 2 days on his horse back to the local temple, yeah, it's going to require resurrection.
Advanced trauma life support.
Yeah. Oh, I like this, but this will be tough. Legion says a life for a life. Resurrection costs the life of someone the PC knows. Patron. Make it tough, Joe. Joe loves it when it's difficult.
Might as well not do it.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be tough. It'd be tough to pull off. I don't know if I want
that. Could be a thing you could do. A person could sacrifice themselves.
13th
that could
age.
Be a thing you could do.
13th age has the best resurrection. It's limited by the cleric.
Yeah.
A cleric can do it once per level and only so many times. And when he reaches, there's only so many times because you only get 10 levels. And when you get to the last time, the cleric actually dies. But
and there's some things that happen along that trajectory.
That hamstrings him,
Yeah. And that all depends on your setting.
Yeah.
So a thing like resurrection, if it puts, makes you see cross-eyed or something, don't have it, or make it really restricted, or do the whole life for a life thing like Legion of Myth is saying.
Yeah. You can,
but if you don't care, like if I run a game, a system, we're not going to really care.
Well, and you also don't care.
It's not going to. Okay.
You don't care to worry about the religions too much, really.
Well, I'm not going to worry about it being. There's not going to be all the religious wars. There's a reason we had religious wars, because all these religions believe that their God is the only one.
Right.
So, and then, unfortunately, some people went around and said, on the Christian side, and decided to try to make people believe, which is weird.
Which is very not Christian.
Right. Anyway, if you don't like resurrection, don't have it.
Yeah. I just I like Ardman's title. He's got one that says a spell called Slow Soul Release, gives you more time for short-term raising. Yeah. You could have a spell like that. Yeah.
And if it's they just died and we're going to do it right now, I don't see that being a huge deal. Cost-wise, like the Legion of Myth, it has a cost.
It all depends on how you want it.
But it all depends on how you want your world to run.
Yeah, if you want death to really be a thing, you got to be careful, though. That means that there might be lots of new characters being made, but you got to be okay with that.
Right.
So, yeah.
Oh yeah, and if that's why I'm suggesting they just died. Resurrection shouldn't be a big deal for them.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're first, second level, you're not even going to want to do that.
No, why are you going to waste your time? Just make a new character.
Yeah. Anyway, we're not necessarily supposed to be talking about.
Yeah, talking about 2 classes, man.
2 classes. So, 2 primary classes and lots of variations underneath. okay, do you have to pick a specialty? Can you just be a fighter? Can you just be a wizard and generalize?
I would think you could. I think there'd have to be a path for that. I'm a warrior of, I'm the generic warrior guy. All I do is just fight, wear armor, kick butt, and take names. That's my
Right.
deal. I don't have special powers, and maybe what they get is maybe they get access to more fightery maneuvers and tricks and special, not focused on, but like particularly fighter maneuvers. I don't know. Maybe they get access to tactics in some way, some bonus to tactical strategy. I don't know. I'm not sure how you would do a super generic fighter guy.
Well, D&D already does that,
Yeah,
right?
that's how it to be. Man.
Especially in the earlier editions, fighters had their attack bonus progress and got a lot of hit points, and their saving throws progressed a lot faster than the other classes and got a lot better.
Yep.
In Unearthed Arcana, they introduced weapon specialization, and I think that was limited to the fighter and fighter.
Yeah, even in
subtypes.
second. High attack bonus damage with all weapons, extra attacks. Yeah, that's a good way to go.
Yeah, and they had the best hit points.
Yeah, and simple modifiers. That'd be good. What's up, Ultra? Eric DeSmet. Glad you guys are in here.
Right.
Ow.
So it was an easy class to understand, especially for beginning characters, beginning players. That is.
Yep.
Easy for them to understand. It's very straightforward.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say, first edition fighters in the high levels, a lot of people thought they lacked the luster of the spellcaster at the higher levels.
I think they do, but I mean, high level magic is going to do more wowy things than just cutting something. I mean, you can only cut something in half and it's dead. You can't, I did 900 damage. It only has 20. I did 900 damage. Whatever.
Yeah.
I just changed the direction of the planet's rotation because I'm a cool magic user. That's pretty more. Right. That's much flashier.
Right. So with the idea that people brought out with the linear fighter and the quadratic wizard, is that
do
we worry about that?
I don't want to. I mean, I think I'm not a slave to balance. I think wizards are going to be more powerful on the high end. You could. David says you could reduce what a wizard can do on the fly. That's fine. But also,
that is what D&D did. There's not. Yeah. Everything was for the wizard was selected. They didn't have anything they can just do.
Yeah, and I think you could. We could figure out what we would like a base wizard to do. Joe would like a base wizard to be the master of all magic in the known universe.
First level, you ninth level spells.
But I mean, yeah, we'll see how it goes.
We get to what I think will take. We have to finish what your position is, because mine's slightly different.
Oh, okay.
I'm just helping you explain these things.
Okay, yeah.
So you want to talk about advantages?
Yeah, well, I
think that's the whole why. So for D&D, what does it matter? So
what does that matter, right? You have the classes already made. Why would you worry about doing this? I think you mentioned already for a newcomer, it could be easier just to pick wizard or fighter. There's nothing else. And it makes a lot of sense. Instead of saying, well, a monk is kind of like a fighter, but doesn't wear armor. And he uses his hands, kind of like, Master of Kung Fu guy or Bruce Lee. And I always thought when that was described to me, I was like, what's he doing fighting dragons? That seems dumb. I mean, I mean, when someone explained it to me, for the longest time, I didn't like the monk at all. I hated the monk, in fact. Can't say I'm a huge fan of it right now, unless I'm in the right setting.
You have to think about the monk, not from the perspective of Bruce Lee.
Right.
From the perspective of fantastic representations of like a Shaolin monk.
Crouching tiger, hidden dragon, walking on top of the
mystics.
Branches.
Yeah, they're mystics.
And that makes me wonder, and they're kind of a gish too, then, because they're going to do mystical things and be fighty.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think helping the learning curve is one thing. I think also it simplifies. It can simplify class abilities. To to where well, maybe that's the same thing. I'm not sure. I'm looking at my notes. It's less choices initially. It seems the biggest thing is simple to start, but if we have all these other things once you get into it, it might end up being just as complicated.
So, to my mind, if you have a setup like this, if you're concerned about new players not being able to pick it up well, you would have to have some developed initial, like, so here's the first level, if there's levels, and if there's a first level, whatever. This is how a beginning character looks. And here's this kind of character and that kind of character. Have 3, 4, 5 examples of how you can set all this stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it will probably be confusing in comparison, because a first level D&D fighter, first edition, second edition, it was as straightforward as you can make it.
Yeah, and if you picked something else like a ranger, it was all listed out for you.
Yeah, everything's
separately.
listed.
I only have to know this set of things. Whereas in our system, you kind of have to. Not in our system. We don't have a system in this concept.
In this concept,
there'll be enough choices to where it might be overwhelming even to begin with. Because I'm like, where do you think you're heading? I don't know. I just want to swing a sword. So hopefully we can make it to where at low level, that's all you have to do.
Yeah.
You don't have to make a choice all the time, or maybe even immediately.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay. So this is brainstorming. This isn't we have written a bunch of stuff down to do precisely. This is brainstorming. It's an idea that Randy and I have bounced around. We only need 2 classes. So we're talking about it out loud.
Someone mentioned it last week, and I thought, we talked about it a lot.
Yeah.
That's all. Every class is either a fightery dude or a magic-y dude or some variation of that.
Right.
The rogue, you could argue, is something else, but not really. He gets special fightery things with a sneak attack, and
he's a weak fighter with some special abilities.
Correct.
Because they get low hit points, can't use very much different armor. Weapons is a debatable subject. The early version of Backstab was very difficult to pull off and only worked on certain creatures. So weak, but advance really fast.
Ultra American says, I'd much rather have too many options than not enough. You would. Also, what makes the variety of classes in D&D any different than the career combos and Horde Wars?
Well, the difference, I'll answer the second part of that.
Yeah.
With Horde Wars, you have a lot more variation, I think, than in especially your base D&D.
Yeah.
Or your earlier versions of D&D. Mm-hmm. You're a fighter. You're nothing else. Or you're a magic user. You're nothing else. In Horde Wars, you can have pretty strong fighting options and magic using options at the same time.
Yeah.
From the start.
Your guy is a perfect example.
Yeah. You don't have depth.
No.
And so my character that's an assassin wizard is very narrowly focused on the magic. Only has 3 spells he can do.
Right.
And will likely not have that many more depending on how far we advance, because there's not that many. You don't get more spells necessarily when you level.
You have to pick them during features and stuff.
And that's only every other level. So the most you could get in spells is another 5, perhaps. Yeah. If there are that many to get. So it's a narrow focus. So that pretty much allows more easily allows you to combine those 2 things together.
Yeah.
Fighting and magic.
Yeah, and depending on your table composition, I think a choice of just wizard or fighter for some people some things would be feel too samey on the surface. I think though with what's built underneath, it could be really complicated. I feel like this system probably at first I thought it'd be great for a beginner, but it might be better for experienced players. This could be advanced mud. This could be advanced mud sword.
Could be. the why we're brainstorming this is let me say this differently. What problem do you see you're solving with doing it this way with regard to having discrete classes?
Yeah. I was hoping, but apparently I'm not. I was hoping I would save time, because in a classic D&D style game, if I pick fighter, I have to get all these abilities for a fighter throughout all their levels. And if we're going to do a 20 level game, which I kind of feel like that's where we're at, but we may not have a level game after all. But I think, let's say we do. Right now, that's all I'm kind of thinking about. I got to have a whole class full of fighter stuff, and a whole class full of warlock stuff, and a whole class full of wizard stuff, and a whole class full of cleric stuff, and a whole class full of druid stuff, and a whole class full of barbarian stuff, and a whole class full of, right?
So you're thinking about on the creation end.
Yes.
So on the creation end, it seems like it might be easier to do it like this.
But the more, well, because then I could design the warrior and think of all the variations and let them like sort of pick through tiers or through levels of what they get, and say, if you do this particular path, you'll be a ranger. If you do this path, you'll be a paladin.
If the system allows for those, it'll be something ish.
Right.
Paladin
We may not have any of those things. Right.
Right.
It could be a champion of Lohas. Who knows what will be called.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to present a slightly different
Do it, man.
thing. So instead of just having two, you're going to have a third.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
The third is the hybrid. So
okay.
So instead of having the fighters, I'm going to have a fighter class, but if I want to pick a magic thing, I can and become a ranger. Instead, you have the hybrid. You have three classes: fighter, magic user, whatever you want to call the hybrid.
Okay?
Gish. Let's say gish.
Yeah.
I don't like that word.
No, I don't either. No, it wouldn't be in the book.
Right. But you have your hybrid class, and that will cover you being able to have some fighting and some magic. So if we're thinking that the two things that the characters can do really well is fighting and magic, there are going to be inevitably someone like me who wants to do both.
Yes.
Who doesn't want to suck at one, which is what, if I'm a fighter, I can go find a scroll and learn a spell. I'm going to pretty much suck at magic. I'm only going to know one or two spells.
Right.
Instead, you could have the hybrid class. They're still going to have less capability at magic than the magic user classes, less fighting capability than the fighter classes, although that's a little bit different from D&D hybrids, because the ranger, you could say, depending on the version of D&D, the ranger actually in early D&D wasn't as good a fighter as the fighter. You might have had the same attack modifier, right? Same Thaco, but you had lower hit points and you had more restrictive armor choices. So I think that maybe they were not as good a fighter, but they had the spells. But they didn't get those until 8th level. And the most you could get, the highest level spell you get maybe 3rd as a druid spell. 3rd level druid spells, 1st through 3rd, and then 1st or 2nd level wizard spells, or it might have been the other way, depending on the version. But paladins could wear all kinds of armor, heavy armor, good weapons, but they didn't get their magic until like 9th level or something like that,
right.
8th or 9th, really high. Especially if you only, like old school gamers, they only like to go to 3rd level. So their rangers and paladins would never have spells. Anyway, so this is a hypothetical variant where you have the mage has access to lots of different spell types, a familiar esoteric knowledge such as alchemy and the like, may master certain spells, gaining access to alternate options, and have access to the most powerful magic.
Right.
And they have the least restrictions with respect to magic items.
Okay.
That's an old school thing.
Yeah, it is.
In 1st edition D&D, and might have even been in the rule cyclopedia, it was very specifically stated magic users use all the things.
Right.
The fighter has high hit points, good class-based combat defenses. I'm thinking instead of, we've thought about instead of having an armor class, you have defensive value.
Right.
The fighter's going to be the best at that. Has the highest resistances to things. They're going to be durable.
Gotcha.
Right. The best selection of armor, Master of many weapons and weapon styles, has the most combat options, best potential for acquiring and defending a domain. So wizards can get a tower and teach folks,
Right.
and maybe be part of a fighter's domain, but getting the domain, the castle, running a kingdom, that's going to be the fighter thing, right? In this imaginary setup. The hybrid, Gish, whatever, has access to many weapons, though our master maybe only one at most. Access to a select list of spells based on a theme or an exclusive list, like these are the bard spells, or these are the ranger spells. Armor selection varies a lot. Moderate hit points. So this is where the paladin or ranger, bard, if you want warlock, that's where this would be, because warlocks were limited in their magic and had okay hit points and weapon use. And then clerics would live here too in the hybrid area, because that's what they were. So, but these would all probably be reimagined a little bit.
They'd have to be. I think especially the middle guy, the Gish type guy, he would have to be reimagined in such a way so he's not like some of the bard variants we've seen that they call him jack of all trades, a master of none, and I called him, like I think Legion was saying, you can choose to suck at one or suck at both. I always thought the bard sucked at everything he did, especially during, like, I think it was second and even early third edition. He wasn't that great. And then later on, it became really awesome for whatever reason, and then kind of weird, but I don't know. Hold on just a second. I'll be right back.
All right. So, yes, obviously, this isn't how D&D normally works. D&D has discrete classes, and that's how it normally works. And you have to make a hard choice. This is how I want my character to be, and you generally can't go back or do something different unless you multi-class or dual class if you use those rules. So we're thinking of, this is like I said at the beginning, this is just a brainstorming session based on conversations we've had about why do you need all these classes, mostly from Randy's side. Because
I'm not sure if doing this is going to work. I mean, it may not solve the problem that I wanted. It may make things more.
Simple, like you're wanting simple. So I asked simple for who?
For me. Right. In the building end.
Yeah. So if you're on the design end of a system, you're probably better served not worrying about making your job easier.
Yeah, true.
I would also say your best bet is also to think about, since we're thinking about a different system, not in D&D terms, but except maybe we like D&D, but we don't like X things about D&D, and we turn dial, so to speak, until we get to where we want. And this could be a dial that could be turned.
Yeah, and it may just be that, when it comes to creation, this, and I still think, and here's part of it too. Part of it was a little flippant, but part of it was, I do think it's funny. I think there is a game called Wizards, Warriors, and Thieves that only has
yes.
And I always thought, I don't even think you need the thief. And Arnman's comment about thief skills being based on a D6 last week, and the idea that I think thieves are often, just in my opinion, superfluous. I mean, very quickly they become, in D&D, they become less than useful.
Right. In the D&D conception of what a thief is. Yes.
Unless you just fully stick to dungeon crawling, and even then, if you get more higher level characters, everybody can do stuff that thieves can do.
You're an ancillary player.
You really are.
Because you help with finding traps, opening locks, and then helping the fighter or the cleric attack something. You're not taking in on anything straight up as a thief.
Well, David Gwill's got it. He says his issue with the thief is that the concept seems too weak or shallow. Yeah, it's really not got much behind it. It's never had much behind it. Third edition, the only reason you could build a really cool rogue is because you would dip into other classes.
That and I think 3.5 they beefed them up too. They give them all kinds of different
Be right
things they
back,
can
yeah.
do. So the concept from, say, 4th edition for the thief was that they changed them radically. Instead of them being an ancillary class that helps out with things, they are front line, called strikers. I think rangers were strikers as well, and their damage output was higher than fighters for some reason. But that's the concept that they went with, was that the thief's concept went from being a dungeon delving or urban delving type character to fully combat focused. So they hit your weak points, and they maybe struck from the shadows and were tricky and dodgy and stuff.
And I really found
that's the thief concept for 4th edition, right?
Yeah.
Strikers.
Yeah, and even in 3rd edition, I found it stupid when was it 3rd edition or Pathfinder or some other version where the thief was all of a sudden able to sneak attack undead and sneak attack golems. I just thought, that's getting weird.
Right.
Precision
damage. Right.
Is what Pathfinder uses. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I think maybe I am with Mud Sword. And this was only loosely meant to be Mud Swordish, but it was connected. I was really I think maybe I am sticking to too many D&D tropes, and need to just kind of think outside the box with that stuff. Yeah. Patties. Oh, yeah, you found Patties. That's good.
Yeah. So essentially, Randy and I have had lots of offline discussions about how many classes do you need in a game, in a game system, and whose need. So I think that's really what we're hitting the nail on the head as far as whose need. So if the game is for us, and Randy's making a game and I'm making the game, we're both getting in on it. What do we conceive of as the classes, if there are going to be any classes? And Randy's insisting on there only needs to be 2, because there's magic users and there's fighters. And we're just brainstorming that idea. We're not necessarily saying, I said D&D has too many classes, it has too much class, but that was just, a title. We're just talking about the idea and seeing how it flows from our mouths out to you. And I just wanted to have a slightly different take on it, because people don't want to just do one or the other.
No,
people want to have some fighting and a little magic, or maybe have magic and a little fighting. Lots of people.
Yeah. I think my 2 class system, as much as I think you can make a good argument that's all D&D classes are. They're either fightery or magic-y. The thief being the one weirdo who's not really, he's still kind of fightery. He's more fightery than no, the old thief could read scrolls and stuff, so I don't know what he was. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure which way it would go, but I'm getting to a different topic. I do think D&D does boil down to 2 classes and all its variants, but I'm not sure saying it's 2 archetypes and then allowing people to make other choices necessarily does anything for the complexity.
Right.
And I got to ask myself, and we got to ask ourselves, what do we really want? How do we want character creation to really be like? Is it going to be D&D-esque or something completely different?
And I think you touched upon something here that is probably very true. If we do design something, it's going to be more difficult to genericize it or break things down into 2 archetypes and try to stuff everything in it
that we want,
fights, rather than have multiple discrete classes. I think having multiple discrete classes is easier. It will take less work, especially since we already have a lot of those ideas that we've worked with in gaming for 50 years almost.
Right.
So trying to come up with something radically different might be more work.
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, we haven't gotten very far in it, so I don't know if it's the real next question is, should we continue bothering? I don't know.
Well, bothering with what? Doing anything at all, or sometimes
anything at all. But I know that's not going to be satisfying, because we've been talking about this for 40 years. Why would we not continue to do it? So I'd like to see it happen, though. It's just, I don't know.
I think that our best bet,
Mm-hmm.
and correct me if I'm wrong out here in chat land, I think one, there's all kinds of generic out there already. I don't think we should do a generic. I think we should think about our setting and then think about the rules and then go back and forth. So whatever, even if we just start writing lore,
Right.
that will give birth to some idea, to some degree, for classes.
Yeah. And
And
that's the
then,
part I enjoy anyway, is the lore part.
yeah, and then we can derive the classes from the lore to some degree. They don't doesn't all have to be there. There can be classes that aren't discreetly mentioned in the lore that we come up with.
David asked a hard question. He always asks me this, and I understand it. It's a good question. What is your game addressing that existing games don't do for you? Nothing right now. What I find is, and it's much harder for me to coalesce it into an idea, is when I'm playing OSE. When I'm playing OSE, I'm like, this is fun. And then I'm like, I don't like this. This should be more interesting. And one thing I do like about OSE in BASIC is there's very few rules, really. I mean, I can distill it down to just a few things. And then I like the freedom that affords me as a dungeon master. I can do all sorts of things. Whereas as we move along in the D&D editions, there tends to be so many rules. Now, I don't mean that as a bad way. I'm not saying there's too many rules. The game is more mechanical. There's more mechanical aspects to consider that I feel, maybe I just feel constrained when I shouldn't be. But I watch other people, like our friend Greg and even Joe a little bit, they see a game that's got a lot of moving parts and they can think of something else to add to it that's kind of cool. Whereas I just feel it feels like walls to me. I'm blocked off everywhere. And that's not, I don't want a narrative game, but I do want a game that has a lot of freedom for me so that I'm not bound by, well, you got to have this thing to do that and this rule to do this, and characters aren't flanking, they get this, and every,
But that's two different things.
Okay.
So the character side,
Yep.
Even if there's a little bit of a build game, that shouldn't impact the DM.
Okay.
That doesn't necessarily have to impact the DM, because all that happens when you're making choices about your character, and you level. You say, I want this, that, and the other thing when I level, and then I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
That's separate from sitting down and rolling dice in an encounter, whether it's combat or not. Unless the character, and this is what 3rd edition and Pathfinder 3.5 especially, and Pathfinder especially did, is they kept adding new game rule elements with the new character classes.
Yes, that was annoying beyond
multiple exceptions to the normal rules. So flanking works like this. Unless you have this feat tree, now flanking works totally different from my one different character class. So I understand why you wouldn't want that.
Right. That's the thing that I don't want at all. And I feel like OSE, for me, gives me the right amount of freedom, but I also feel like for my players, you guys feel like you don't have enough to really sink your teeth into.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, not just you. When we were playing, I was just watching, and there was a lot of player like, oh, you guys weren't bored, but you're like, not many choices. I guess I'm doing this. And I just, I don't know. Boy, man, I don't know where I'm at. But the two classes thing was meant because I think D&D can be distilled to that.
Well, there's certainly you can distill roles, if not classes, into those, because you're fighting a lot and you're casting magic a lot with the different classes. So if those are roles, then you have those too. But you can have others, but you can have at least one other, and that's someone who's very skilled,
Mm-hmm.
like the thief,
Mm-hmm.
has lots of skills. Even the monk primarily fights. Most of the special abilities that monks get, they mainly just make the monk better,
Mm-hmm.
tougher, maybe more attacks. They can attack more things, but they're not, unless you're talking about third edition where you had monks that can become fiery. But your first edition monk, they became immune to things. They got faster. Everything was within their own body. So that's not necessarily a spellcaster. Spellcasters usually, shoot things out.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they buff people up, and those people can be better at what they normally do. But the monk's special abilities basically just focus on themselves.
Yeah, I think some of the tabletop rules that were brought in with third edition, and then fully became in full bloom in Pathfinder. And as they added the rules and more of this, I can do it all. I mean, we got to where we were pretty smooth with it. But when I stepped away for a while, I was like, I don't want to go back to that.
Right.
I'm not interested in going back to that.
I think you can have pretty robust classes you can have lots of different classes that do different things.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't necessarily need to introduce all this multiple exceptions to the rules all the time.
Right. Maybe just give them a few special abilities and let them kind of fill a niche of whatever they fill.
Right. I think one of the problems with the game when it went into that generation,
Mm-hmm.
3.5, then into Pathfinder,
Mm-hmm.
is there was too much depth. You have too many spellcasters, too many exceptions. Even everybody became a magic user to some point, even barbarians.
Yeah, they had magical
Right.
abilities. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it needs to be a little flatter.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think.
Or at the very least, all these choices shouldn't necessarily impact the rules that much. Like, I'm going to roll a d20 and apply either a strength or a dex modifier to hit.
Right.
Except for this wild dude over here who, instead of strength, uses charisma. Or, right? Or this weird rogue, when he flanks, he doesn't need to have anybody flanking. He's a flanker all by himself.
Yeah.
But I'm using the flanking rules.
Yeah, no.
Or weird things like that. Too many edge cases.
And in 3.x, there were tons of them. And people
too many edge cases.
They would find the loopholes and bring them in, and it kind of drove me a little nutty. Yeah. I think the advantage of classes, at least, is that you can pick an archetype. They do represent sort of an archetype thing, and you can just go with it. I don't know. I just think the game. Part of me thinks someone should have created a version of D&D that just had warrior and wizard. It feels like it should have been done because it's all there, But oh well. I don't mean just those two classes. I mean, like we're talking about with the whole optional.
Well, they've done similar things, like paladins are a fighter sub type, as are rangers, and you could have easily, if the barbarian existed at that point, put them in there too.
Mm-hmm.
They're all, so they had the subclass idea in second edition.
Yeah.
But the monk would really be a little difficult, especially as the first edition version of the monk.
Oh yeah, and the bard, first edition bard, that was crazy.
Oh, right. So the first edition monk sucked at everything, except running fast, because they could move really well. They had low hit points, low armor class. Couldn't, especially if you used all the rules. So they used their fist. If you looked at the weapon versus armor rules for the fist,
Mm-hmm.
they couldn't hit anything.
So are we thinking, because I feel like I'm thinking now that the idea of two classes, while it's right, doesn't fix anything. I mean, you still have all the variations underneath it, right?
Right, because if you want variety,
Yeah.
you're just doing it differently. So you basically you're stirring the pot.
Yeah.
But if you just want a fighter and you just want a magic user,
Mm-hmm.
you can do that. And then the hiding and sneaking stuff, that's no big deal. But fighter, there's a magic user. Maybe there's a healing school that they can use. So you don't necessarily have to have it clear. And then you don't, what do you need with the other classes? Do you want other classes? Do you want other options?
Right. And again, that's where I think you're right. We've talked about it before, though. We need to get our setting fully, or at least moderately fleshed out so we can build classes from it.
Right.
Oh, well. Okay. Well, hey, guys, probably it'd be a good idea this time to tell them to get that like and subscribe going. Where is that at? Yeah. Why don't you subscribe to the show? Like us wherever you listen to us, and tell your friends and your enemies and everybody else about us. So do that. Do all the things. So before we move to the next topic, the second to last topic, Iron Man asked a good question. We've been Horde Wars, doing Horde Wars like crazy, and I think there'll be a bunch of them at Cabin Con in a few weeks. It says, do you see Horde Wars as a campaign game?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. I think you can have a good, solid campaign with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see it as. I don't know. I'd like to see advanced before I fully make my decision.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
I'd like to see advanced. When I see advanced, I'll know if it's a full 1 to 12 campaign like it's supposed to be. I'm getting the feeling it will be. I've had some previews of the advanced rules, and they look kind of fun. We got to experience some of the cool tchotchkes and advanced last session, so we'll see how it goes. I really want to. Ooh, that's good news. Patty says he is working on the overworld map for Blackwall. Yes.
That's good. That's good stuff.
Dude, I cannot wait for that. Thank you. Man.
See, and to me, you can use a lot of rule sets for campaigns, depending on what you mean by campaign. If you're just talking about, we're going to do lots of adventuring,
then you can do whatever you want.
Yeah. It all depends.
Our man asked a good question. I'm assuming it's to us. Could you do your setting, our Mudsword setting, with Horde Wars setting specific changes?
I think, possibly.
Yeah,
but
I think we could.
There are some rules I do not like.
Mm-hmm.
I do not like their. I can live with it, and it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like their encumbrance rules.
Yeah, Joe's really put off by that.
Right. It's counterintuitive in a lot of ways.
I like it because it seems to be easy to track.
It's easy to track. There's some positives. Mm-hmm. It's very gamey, but it's very counterintuitive.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah, and sometimes some things don't make sense. They're just they count as a full slot because they're too useful.
Yeah. Not necessarily because they would really take up that much space.
Yeah.
But right.
Yeah, you could change the encumbrance.
Yeah. But then we're back. We're really back to where we started.
Yeah.
Right? In a way. So we were talking earlier, the reason why we have these discussions is because we play different systems, and then we're like, after you play it for a little bit, you're like, I don't like that.
Yeah, or it's not doing exactly what I want to do. But and plus we've always wanted to take a stab at our own. I don't know.
Yeah.
I do want this at Cabin Con if I have time. My real world life has been Joe knows what it is. I'm having a lot of heavy issues, taking a lot of my time and stress. And I think, I don't know if you saw it today, I posted I may or may not have a game at Cabin Con. I may be prepared to run. I may just be a player. I'm not sure. I'm going to try to have something. If it is, it'll be either Horde Wars or a Savage Worlds game of some sort.
Right.
So
something easy to run and easy to prepare for.
And something I've been playing. I've been playing Savage Worlds. I've been playing Horde Wars.
Yeah.
I was going to do my 13th Age campaign I've been running, but I don't want to get back into the books and start building from that and thinking about it. So yeah, but that's a side note. I did have one more topic. I think we have time to
Yeah, we do.
discuss it. It's another of our newer segments called We're Not Worthy, where we determine whether a role playing game, setting, or genre are worthy of playing a full campaign. That means, and this just means worthy from our opinion. Would I or Joe want to play a full year long? We're deciding a campaign, a full campaign to be a commitment for about a year where you play, significant amount of times within the year this game, or a mini campaign, 2 to 3 months, we'll give plus or minus, or a one shot, or maybe 2 sessions. And I decided last week we did Ravenloft, so I thought maybe this time we would genericize it more and just talk more about horror or modern horror, just a
Okay.
modern or horror type game. It could be Cthulhu, it could be the vampire. Was it? Yeah, vampire. Is Vampire
The
the Masquerade?
Masquerade.
Is that
Yeah.
considered horror? I don't know if that's considered horror. I'm not sure that's considered horror. It's got
It's
maybe.
gothic.
It's gothic something.
It's more gothic, modern
Yeah,
gothic, whatever.
more like gothic angst. But
Yeah. Depends on which version. I mean, there's multiple vampire. There's Vampire the Masquerade, and there's Vampire the
Call
whatever.
of Cthulhu fits it. Dread definitely fits horror. What other? Why am I blanking? There's usually a bunch of games that would be considered horror. I think maybe Palladium's Beyond the Supernatural is kind of a horror type setting. I'm not sure.
There's horror elements.
Deadlands has horror elements in it.
Correct. So, but if we're just talking about a solid horror game,
right?
I would say I'm in the camp of mini campaign or shorter or one shots.
Yeah. Oh,
Gothic.
Josh got one. Aliens.
Aliens, yeah. Well, Aliens has horror elements. Alien, the first movie, is much more of a horror movie than Aliens. Aliens has horror elements, but it's more an action flick that has some horror elements introduced.
Action
sci-fi. In my opinion.
No, I think the second. I think all the Aliens after the first one were more like action sci-fi with horror elements.
Yes.
Whereas the first one was a horror story set in space.
Right.
So, yeah. Dar says VTM, Vampire the Masquerade, is more personal horror, fighting the monster within.
Yeah.
So maybe that. I guess for me, I'm kind of with you. I can't. There's no way, especially because to me, the one that keeps coming to my head is Call of Cthulhu, and I've talked about it before. I can't envision Rippers, maybe.
Has horror elements.
Yeah. Yes, I agree, Legion. He says the Alien RPG has the stress. It does do a good job. Their stress mechanic does a great job, Legion.
I would dial down the screamy parts.
Well, the cascade effect.
It's a really... You scream, I scream. Everybody screams because that's what you end up doing.
I may have misplayed that, but I don't think so. Where
you
can lose it, and the fact that you lost it can cause someone else to lose it, and then we had a cascading effect that got crazy. But I can see horror, like Call of Cthulhu, or some game where you're horror being a short campaign. I wouldn't. Yeah, Darth, I agree it can be, but from my perspective, I would run a 1 or 2 shot with Aliens. I would run a 1-shot Call of Cthulhu. I might run a month or long campaign if I have a few ideas. I can't imagine that I could sustain a year. I couldn't. I think I personally would grow weary of even thinking of adventures and things for the characters to be challenged by. And especially in Vampire, it seems so political sometimes the way I've seen it played, that it would wear on me after a while. It's a political game where you're dealing with clan politics and stuff. It's never been my cup of tea. But for me, I'm the same thing. I think a 1 or 2 shot game would be the most likely. Like Dread, Josh Martinson ran Dread a couple times at Cabin Con, and it plays great as a 1-shot.
Right. Our man says do an episodic campaign. Now, I think, even though it's kind of action horror, supernatural.
Oh, yeah.
So if you have, with the campaign, the idea is there's a theme or a goal, an overarching goal.
Right.
So in the first 3 seasons of Supernatural, it was to defeat Satan.
Right? First 3 seasons was Yellow-Eyed Demon. First 2 or 3 seasons, and then it became Satan. By
Okay.
season 5 was the end.
Season 5. Okay. So, right. The yellow-eyed demon. So, right. So they had small, I guess defeating Satan isn't small. The yellow-eyed demon arc was kind of small. And then Satan was really big. And then it went up to even bigger and got kind of ridiculous.
It did.
But that kind of campaign could be interesting if it would just depend on what the horror element is.
Yeah.
If it's a relentless monster infestation that, as long as you can have enough bullets and your machete stays sharp, you have hope of defeating the monsters right here in this location. But you might have to fight some other monsters somewhere else, or maybe you might have defeated the monsters here right now, and you have some room to breathe. You can go eat a hamburger, have a shower and sleep, and then maybe in a week or a month there might be a new monster infestation. That might be okay to do, or there's some investigation elements if it's a modern setting. So you have some investigation elements. If the level of horror is all the way at the top of the roof the whole time, that's going to be no good for a lot of people, especially me. It'd be better if it had an up and down. Sometimes it's really horrific up here at the top, and sometimes, hey, you're just fighting some scrubs today.
And it's kind of, or it can be even kind of funny, because bringing elements of comedy is always that's a standard trope in horror movies.
Right, because it offsets.
It offsets and relaxes you. Patty's got a cool idea. Listen to this. He says, do a Stone Age horror game, then fast forward or going back in time, and the campaign counts your victories until it's a battle at the end of time against an old one. That's wild, dude. Good idea. That'd be cool. I guess for me, I think it would take. I don't see myself as the dungeon master running a year-long campaign, but if it was good enough, I could do it. Call of Cthulhu is hard for me to picture. I can't imagine doing 1920s Call of Cthulhu and then being so engaged in my character and he doesn't go insane and I live for a full year and do a bunch of different things. But I mean, I'm not a Call of Cthulhu guy, so I don't know much about it.
So in my experience with the source material, not the game, but the source material, the Call of Cthulhu universe, the inevitable, insane destruction of Earth is there.
Right.
So that it's one thing to read it and maybe watch a movie about it, but the campaign with the idea that you're inevitably going to be eaten by Cthulhu at some point, a great old one. It's going to happen. Maybe not today, but if you look at the wrong book or unearth the wrong underground temple that nobody knew about, it's definitely the destruction of Earth is inevitable.
Yeah.
Probably in your lifetime. That's a level of dread I don't really care for.
Yeah. Arman says if you do modern, all your maps are already done.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's an advantage of modern horror. Hey, Brian James in the house. Welcome, buddy.
Yo.
Glad you're here. I think we're playing it in the 19th, right? Is that our next
19th.
game?
19th.
Yeah. A couple weeks before Cabin Con. That'll be cool. Yeah, so, I think that's where I would put it, but I don't know if I have anything else that I would add to this mix. So it's worthy, but full campaign, I'd be very hard pressed to run with.
There's people who like playing that all the time.
They love a Call of Cthulhu. Play the crap out of it in any kind of horror game. So yeah. All right. Got anything cooking in Big Geek Land, Joe? Besides Big Geek Con 2?
No. Just kind of waiting for the right time. Big Geek Con, we've had a few tickets bought, but it's still kind of far out.
Yeah, it is. It is September 20th to 22nd in Saginaw. $30 will get you 3 days of gaming, Friday, Saturday, and most of Sunday. It is at the 4 Points by Sheraton in Saginaw. All that information will be posted in the show notes, or you can go to Tabletop Events and look up Big Geek Con. Is it Big Geek Con or Big Geek Con 2? Do you have it listed as 2?
2024.
Okay,
Big Geek Con 2024.
Good. Now, I think I'll change that in the notes and make that what we call it, Big Geek Con 2024. This year, we hope it's a little bigger and hopefully a little better, and everybody enjoys themselves. But if you can make it out to Saginaw, Michigan, join me and Joe and a few other folks playing games like crazy people, we would love to have you. And $30, that's a steal. Now, coming to Michigan could be expensive depending on where you're at. So we understand that.
We had a few out-of-towners, and we had a lot of locals.
Yes, we did.
Last year.
Yeah. And I hope this year we have, just as many or more of the locals, and I'm going to do a little more advertising. And I hope the people that came last year can make it again. I know it's not going to be easy for everybody, but I would look forward to seeing the folks that came last year. Met a lot of
that
good
would be
people.
Great.
Darth and Flady and Arn Man are the ones that off the top of my head, I remember Flady's brother. It was really good to see them and play games and get to see put faces to names. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, man. We bet ready to bug out of here?
I believe so. I don't think I have anything to add. The only thing I would say with regard to Big Geek Con is the sweet spot for us to make it work well without taking a loss is about 20 folks.
Yeah,
right.
We get 20 people. We'll be in pretty good.
So right now we have 5.
Right.
Well, 5 people who bought tickets. We need about 15 more.
Yeah, and
for it to work out well.
We should be good to go then.
Yeah.
All right. So I don't know. I keep forgetting. Are we doing if you want to support the show stuff, or just it's all in the show notes?
It's all in the show notes.
Yeah, it's all in the show. I keep forgetting. Got all sorts of links where you can send us money and PayPal and Ko-fi and all sorts of other stuff. But anyway, I think we're done, guys. Thanks for everybody.
Yeah.
I'm Randy.
And I'm Joe.
And remember, if you can't be big like us, then be geeks like us.